This is a small excerpt of the entire Contact Report 444 translation.
And what I should further report, which will come about at about the same time, relates to the EU, European Union. The EU, which broadens itself ever more to a dictatorship, and along with the amounts of billions which it receives from the member states for the maintenance of the bureaucracy, and so forth, will now also charge its own taxes in all the member states and therewith act out further power through which all member states will be able to be further financially exploited. Next to that, the EU also wants its own 100,000 strong army in order to be able to lead military employments according to its own discretion. Furthermore, the EU Council will once more occupy itself with an action plan in regard to climate change, however only in the sense that around 20% renewable energy is to be produced. That, however, as Petar says, is nonsensical, because the measures which are discussed lead to no successful alteration regarding the improvement or even the halting of climate change. The whole matter of the climate disaster is, on one hand, already too far progressed in order to still be able to influence it for the better through small measures, and secondly, such resolutions are useless anyway because they would not remedy the basic problem, namely overpopulation.
But regarding the EU's plan of action in regard to renewable energies and regarding the climate change, I still want to say the following. Principally, the climate change can only thereby be usefully fought, and a degree of a previous form of climate can only be attained, if, through a worldwide, rigorous stop to births, ordered and controlled by the governments, humanity is drastically reduced to a reasonable amount. The natural predetermined mass of population in regard to the planet Earth amounts to 529 million. Today, however, over 7,500,000,000 humans already exist on the Earth, therefore in excess of around 7 billion, because, according to your calculations, the terrestrial calculations of the population, which only speak of somewhat more than 6 billion, are not correct. However, this mass of humanity means that, in every regard, ever more means are required for humanity's daily requirement and for the obtaining of energy that nature, and the planet, with its resources and the atmosphere, is able to cope with. In particular, CO2 is thereby to be named, as well as chlorofluorocarbons, which drive the atmosphere into a greenhouse effect and evokes monstrous climatic changes, which again lead to the gravest storms, earthquakes and volcanic outbreaks, with enormous destruction, and which demands uncountable human lives. That is, even when the arrogant terrestrial geologists and climatologists, as well as other scientists, do not recognize these facts and therefore dispute them. Truly also renewable energies lead to climate change because, also through these, monstrously great amounts of CO2 are produced which have damaging effects on the entire climate system which, however, is not recognized by the responsible ones or, against better knowledge, is simply vehemently denied. Therefore the CO2 is not reduced, rather it is more and more concentrated and consequently also destroys the climate more and more, respectively, it promotes the climate change more and more. The responsible ones of the governments and the scientists are arrogant, ignorant or simply conceal the real facts in regard to the matter that all their measures for climate protection are completely useless and rather, on the contrary, further promote climate change because, on one hand, the measures, which have been resolved and carried out, bring new emissions which destroy the climate, and, on the other hand, the world population increases by further hundreds of millions of humans during the implementation of the resolutions and the establishment of new technologies. These, however, again require new energies and new means for daily use, and so forth, which leads to this, that yet again, and always, more and more new energy sources have to be created which emit CO2 and promote climate change, respectively, destroy the climate. Therefore, for a rational human being, the evil of climate change, as well as many other plagues, afflictions, injustice, adversary, harm, malice, need and misery, and so forth, is clearly identifiable with the incessantly growing overpopulation. With overpopulation, terrestrial humanity has opened Pandora's box and can no longer close it because the responsible ones of the world, the governments and authorities, as well as the terrestrial population, are too stupid, selfish, egoistical and high-handed to recognize this truth and to grasp and carry out the necessary countermeasures.
What you say is that which corresponds to the truth. Yet it requires reason and understanding in order to comprehend the entire thing.
Which the responsible ones of the earth, the governments, as well as the authorities and scientists, and so forth, however, clearly lack. They have a good life for themselves because it only worries them that everything is the best for themselves while they do not care a jot what happens with the world, nature, the fauna and flora, as well as with the humanity when they pass on.
Also that corresponds to that which is real,